Tonight, I have the honor of introducing our special guest and welcoming him to our great city. Dr. P. Clay Sherrod is an astronomical researcher, consultant, and educator in earth and physical sciences, astronomy, and archaeology. Everything I did not take in college. Dr. Clay began his astronomical studies in 1970 with Sky Arkansas Incorporated. So without further delay, on loan from the cosmos, Dr. Clay, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jonesboro, for having me. I know we have a lot of competition tonight with other events going on, but I appreciate you so much for being here, and I think you're going to take away something. You may not take away all of it. Some of you may pick up bits and pieces, but that's kind of what it's all about. And you're in for one of the major experiences of your lifetime, of your family's lifetime, for what you've experienced already, all the way through the rest of your life. You'll never see anything like this again. We've got to have a computer. There we go. There we go. I'm just going to back her up. Now, yes, can we please dim those lights? A little bit lower, please. Thank you. Just so that I won't stumble up here. There we go. That's good. All right. As I was coming up here, I was thinking it was so good to leave Coyote Country up on Pettigene Mountain and come down to Red Wolf Country where things are a little more serious. And driving into Jonesboro, it's been many years since I've been into Jonesboro. I used to come up here and lecture quite a bit. And I was frankly shocked at how much the city's grown, how progressive it appears, and how just totally revitalized, and the university itself. And so proud to be up here among you folks. How many people, I can see, how many people here are from Jonesboro itself? Okay, how about the university? Any outliers from other communities outside? Because this affects all around us. It's not just Jonesboro. And as you're going to see, it's going to affect so many different aspects of your lives for about a week. But let me tell you what, it's going to be 1 week that you'll never forget, both good and bad. There are attributes to this, and there are some negatives. And we hope to leave you educated but not scared. Most of you kind of remember, or anybody that's into country western music may remember the Garth Brooks sort of unannounced concert that they put on Bass Pro Shops in 2022 up in Branson. Now, what's Branson and Garth Brooks got to do with the total eclipse, for gosh sakes? Well, what you're seeing on this screen is what it's got to do with the total eclipse in 2024. This was 4.5 hours before Garth got on stage. 74,000 people had bought tickets. Not half of them made it to the concert because of the traffic, because nobody was prepared. It was announced on a lark, kind of a surprise. People rushed out, bought tickets, not thinking, okay, I live down in Little Rock, Arkansas, I live in Jonesboro, Arkansas. How am I going to get there, and when do I leave? Well, these people left 4 hours before the concert, and you can see what happened. These people did not get to see Garth. The same situation applies to what you're about to experience on April 8th in 2024. Solar eclipses are extremely rare. That's why people get excited about them. We like adventures in our lifetimes. We like new things that we haven't seen before, and we like to experience better of things that we have experienced before. This one is going to be the granddaddy of all eclipses ever to have happened on North American soil. It's going to be longer than any eclipse that anyone's ever seen alive or ever will be alive again, and it's going to be deeper and darker than any eclipse has ever been witnessed over American soil. You notice here, and I'll step away from time to time and tell me if you can't hear me. You've got two red lines here. This is the width of the shadow that's being cast on the earth that causes the eclipse. We're going to be talking a little bit of science about this. I don't want to bore you with it. But from here to here, along inside this gray path, if you live in that area, you're going to be in a total eclipse of the sun. The eclipse is going to be passing this way. It's a big circle that passes over the earth, and it's moving 2,000 miles an hour. if you live on that blue line, which I do, my observatory is right on the blue line. I mean, it's going right over my telescope. So, yay to me. You know, I've got the longest eclipse of anybody in Arkansas. If you live on that blue line, you're dead center of the eclipse. It's going to be longer, and it's going to be darker. Now, notice over here where Jonesboro is. Okay, you're not in the center. Does that mean you're not going to have a good experience? Heck no. Let me tell you what. This eclipse is not the longest in Jonesboro. There's going to be in other places. For example, Russellville's got 4 minutes and 14 seconds. I've got about 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Yay. And you can kind of see as you get further away from that blue line, the time duration goes down. But let me tell you what, how many of you remember the eclipse in 2017? Yeah. And it was almost total here. I was talking to a couple of people before the presentation tonight, and everybody, you know, experienced the fact that it was a little creepy. The shadows got to be odd, colors changed a little bit, and it was more perceptible as an eclipse here than it was where I was on Pettigene. In the park up there, we had 400 people show up just for a partial eclipse. Nothing compared to a total. But here, it was almost total, just not quite. If you remember, it went through northern Missouri and down into, it left the USA and South Carolina over the Atlantic Ocean. So what I want to do tonight is to give you the details about what's going to happen here and how what's happening other places is going to affect Jonesboro and your surrounding areas. And what I want to do is to emphasize that what happens here is really a multidimensional effect on your community. It affects you as residents. And as I was explaining to the mayor before we got started, the number one responsibility that all of us have, me as someone who helps you get prepared, the mayor as running the city, and every aspect of city government, and even the infrastructural part of your community, it's about the residents. The residents come first. We want to make sure that you stay safe, that there's no unnecessary trespassing, there's no inconvenience. We want you to enjoy the eclipse. If you're a business person, if you own a restaurant or a hotel, or you sell doodads on Main Street, you can sell the heck out of stuff, and you can make a lot of money off this eclipse. T-shirts, cups, bumper stickers, they're already selling to the point, little old Murfreesboro, Arkansas, which I worked with about a month ago. Two shops in Murfreesboro, they have already put in 2 orders of 3,000 T-shirts each, and they've sold out. They can't get the guy to print them quick enough to keep them in stock, and they're selling a mail order. They're not waiting until the eclipse. They're advertising now on Facebook and on social media. That's what you got to do. Get started now as a community. This is when you make your money. But look at these aspects of things that it's going to affect, and take these seriously, because every one of these, and I'm going to go over them in detail. You've got your law enforcement, big issue. You've got medical, a huge issue, because not just from the standpoint of emergency medicine and EMT response, the ability to get to a crisis or an accident or some serious situation, whether it be fire or medical, is paramount. How are they going to get to a certain area if the streets are blocked by people who are coming in, day trippers I call them, coming in for the day to watch the eclipse? How are they going to get to them? Your fire department, same way. Utilities. Most people don't even think about utilities, but that's one of the things that I emphasize the most. And we'll talk about more about utilities. This includes water. Most cities in 2017 along the eclipse path ran out of water. I'm talking about your regular water. When you turn on the tap, they didn't have water coming out because there was no pressure in the tanks. The tanks had dropped to a level where there's not enough pressure to keep up with the demand. They brought in the National Guard in Nashville just to give drinking water until they could pump water back up into the tanks. Same thing with gasoline. But utilities include your water, your electric grid, which is critical when you stop and think about it. If you have a lot of people coming into here, and you might, we'll talk about this, you're going to need more power to put them up. And they're not coming for one day. Trust me. Well, I'll tell you how this works here in just a minute. They're coming for probably 3 or 4 days. And you've got telephone, your cell phones. Will the bandwidth hold up with the demand for everybody holding their cell phone up to the sky, taking video and live streaming it back home to Paducah or to Portland, Maine? Is it going to hold up? with that much demand on the bandwidth on your Wi-Fi systems. It probably will not. I'll tell you right now. And pretty much anything in that eclipse path, you're probably going to have some cell service interruptions. And why is all this so critical and important to people to witness? It's just something about nature that we like. We live in houses where we're restricted in what we do. We live mundane lives sometimes, we think. An eclipse is something that is totally out of our control. It's sort of like a thunderstorm, except more magnificent. It's something that is rare, almost as rare as mankind itself, and it happens, and up until 100 years ago, we really didn't even understand what made it happen. But imagine you're outdoors on April 8, 2024, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're eating a burger or something, looking up at the sky to the south a little bit, got a bright sun, we hope, overhead with no clouds. And it goes from this being very, very bright to this. The sun's just suddenly gone. During an eclipse, there is no twilight. It doesn't slowly get dark. The sun doesn't disappear below the horizon and the sky turns different colors and it's really pretty and cool and you take pictures of clouds. It instantly gets dark in a microsecond and the stars come out. Daytime at noon. It can be startling if you don't know what's going to happen. Now, as old as mankind itself, people have been looking at the eclipse. Until recently, as I said, we didn't even know what made it. It was a bad sign, a bad omen if it happened, because they didn't have a clue what was causing this to happen. In medieval times, it was a bad sign. You know, there were illnesses, diseases, plagues, miscarriages of cattle, crop failures, fires, plagues. They blamed it on eclipses and comets because they didn't know what else to blame it on. But the thing about the eclipse is it always goes away. The sun gets dark, maybe usually for about 2 minutes, and then suddenly it comes right back out again. They did not know that that was the moon going in front of the sun. In China, they thought, well, it has to be something magnificent. The most magnificent thing that we know of is the dragon. So here we have a dragon devouring the sun. It makes perfect sense when you look at this picture here. Yep, see right there? That dragon ate a bite out of the sun. Go back and you see, there he goes. He's got his mouth exactly where that bite came out. And we can tell right now that, well, of course it's a dragon. That makes perfectly good sense. Well, back that far back, Chinese priests that answered to the emperors had no idea, and this was other cultures as well. They didn't understand what made the eclipse. They didn't know it was the moon passing in front of the sun. But they knew that it would go away because their predecessors who had been beheaded because they didn't predict an eclipse had told them, oh, it'll go away. And then, the next day the guy didn't have his head anymore. Well, so at one point, one real smart ancient priest, he said, well, we've got these things that we just invented called fireworks. So I'm going to convince my emperor that I can make it go away. I'm going to run the dragon off. And they shot off fireworks, and that was the first practical use of fireworks in the world. And now today we know it's nothing more than the moon going in front of the sun. Well, it's not really that easy. The moon goes in front of the sun, sort of, during new moon every month. We have a lunar cycle that lasts 27 days. We've all seen it. Last week we had that beautiful blue supermoon. Did anybody see that? That was great. I mean, what a great thing that was to see and photograph. That was a full moon. The new moon is when the moon is in front, blocking our direction toward the sun, but it doesn't always entirely block it. We have to understand. Some of you can see actually that this is the moon in front of the sun. You can see the dark areas of the moon, and behind it, you can see around that very edge, some of you sitting close can actually see some of the flames, the prominences coming out of the sun. This is one of the fascinating things about the solar eclipse, is that you can actually see the sun's activity. What you're seeing here in this picture is not just light coming out from behind the moon. This is the actual gases, the atmosphere of the sun. All these rays, this elaborate, intricate magnetic field of rays, ions, charged particles flying out into space at 186,000 miles a second. Give you a real quick astronomy lesson. The reason we have an eclipse The moon orbits the Earth. It goes around the Earth, as I said, in 27 days. If you were to go out tonight and look at the moon and you saw a bright star next to it, and if you could sort of fixate on that star, say at 9 o'clock, and you went out again at 12 o'clock, you would find out that the moon has moved away from that star a little bit in only 3 hours. And the reason for that is the moon moves its own diameter eastward every single night. And that accounts for the motion of the moon going around the Earth in one month. It's the basis of our month. But if you notice down here, this green orbit, which is exaggerated, the moon's orbit is not a circle. It's not a perfect circle. It's flattened, or an ellipse. And it's moving around. Sometimes it's close. The moon can be closer. That's called perigee. And sometimes farther. So those circumstances have to be kept in mind when you try to understand why we have eclipses sometimes, but mostly we do not. Like I said, this is the only one that we're going to see of this magnitude ever in our lifetimes. Let's do a little experiment here. Take your hand and hold it not all the way out, but elbow bent, and find some object up here. You can block me out if you want to. Find some object and move it until you completely block me out, okay? Or whatever you want to focus on. You could use that hand, for example. And just block it out to where you can't see it, okay? Now just imagine what you're looking at. Your hand is the moon. The object you're looking at, me or whatever, is the sun. Now move your hand further away, and what happens to your hand relative to the size of me? Your hand gets smaller because it's further away. Now move it closer until you completely block me out. Isn't that pleasurable? Just block me out completely. Now move it closer. All right, that's perigee. The moon is really close, you know. So now, before you finish, move your hand up. And you can see, even if your arm wasn't in a way, you can see me underneath, and move it down, and you can see me above. Well, one reason we did that is because that's what happens with the moon. The moon is tilted 5 degrees from being flat with the Earth's orbit around the sun. So not all the time is the moon in the way of the sun every new moon. Sometimes it's below, and sometimes it's above. Most times it's above or below. It rarely gets in direct line between the Earth, the moon, and the sun, and when it does, we have the phenomena of the solar eclipse. Now, remember moving it back and forward. Not every eclipse is the same. I'm telling you this because this is why this one coming up in 2024 is so special. The eclipse in 2017 was like this. This was a partial. Most of you kind of remember this aspect of it. You had a little bit more coverage down here than this. This is called an annular eclipse. This is when the moon is much further away, and you're not totally able to cover the sun up completely because your hand was too far away, essentially. It has to be exactly right for it to be a total. This is what you want. This is when the sun and the moon are exactly the same size in the sky from Earth. It's perhaps a coincidence, perhaps not, maybe God-given. The sun is 93 million miles away from us. It's 1 million miles across in diameter, huge. The little moon is 2,380 miles across, little bitty. But it's only 238,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. So from our vantage point, just coincidentally, they are exactly the same size, or we would never have the phenomena known as the solar eclipse. Now here basically, very quickly, the way the eclipse is going to work, it's going to enter the southwest corner of Arkansas, actually into Queen. It's going to move across like Russellville and Pettigene right over my observatory. And it's going to move on up this way, and it's going to cross near, very close to Mountain View. It's going to be one of the center spots to give you an idea. 115 mile an hour wide shadow, and it's moving 2,000 miles an hour. NASA is sending up a plane, which it always does. It's kind of getting to be old hat, but they actually get in the shadow, and they follow the shadow at 2,000 miles an hour all the way up into Maine. That's kind of cool. I mean, you've got 5 hours of eclipse. Okay, fundamentally, here's where the eclipse begins way down here in the Pacific Ocean, and by morning it's over Mexico, and then it's crossing Texas, and then you can see it's going over Arkansas and then on up here. Down here, it's longer because the path is beginning to narrow out a little bit. As it moves to the northeast, the path is getting more and more narrow, but not by much. Arkansas is highly favored. Texas right now, just to give you an idea and kind of get ahead of myself, all of the lodging in Texas is gone. There's no RV parks, there's no primitive camping available. All the motels and hotels in eastern Texas are booked. And they're booked at $1,000 a night, 3 nights minimum, no refund. Yeah, that's some pocket change. And it's starting to happen in Arkansas. We'll talk about this briefly in a minute, but right now I did a quick survey about 2 weeks ago before I headed out on another presentation to find out what the situation was along the corridor of I-40 going from Little Rock up toward Fort Smith. That would include North Little Rock, Conway, Marlton, Russellville, Clarksville, and Ozark. Ozark is outside the path. Little Rock is barely inside the path. Nobody would want to really be there. You'd want to go west to see more totality. Every single hotel is booked now. Every single one of them. Some of the hotels are actually canceling reservations that they already had last year so that they can double their rates again. And they're already all charging minimum $600 a night, most of them $800 to $1,000 per night, 3-night minimum, no refund. On the no refund deal, here's the reason that people do that, and I agree with this. A long time ago, when I first started chasing eclipses, okay, let's say that I was going to do this eclipse. I would go down here and I'd book myself a hotel in Dallas. Then I'd get me one in Texarkana. I'd make another reservation in Russellville. Then I'd make another reservation up in Mountain View rather. And then I'd make one up here in Indianapolis. Well, why would I do that? Weather. You don't know what the weather's going to do. So 1 week before the eclipse, you start looking at the weather dude on TV, and he says, well, this is all going to be cloudy down here. It's looking really bad. You start canceling those reservations because you've got that 24-hour cancellation window where you still get your refund. You see where I'm going with this? And you keep these. And then as the weather begins to change even more, you start canceling these too. Or it could be the other direction. Or it could be some little opening right up in here. And you cancel everything, and you keep those reservations. What that does is it kills the hotel industry, the lodging, the restaurants, everybody who had reservations in those towns. It kills them. So this idea, and even Arkansas State Parks, to give you an idea of how legitimate this is, if that's any degree of legitimacy, Arkansas State Parks and their cabins and campgrounds have got the same rule. They've doubled or tripled their rates on the lodges and cabins and campsites, and they've got a 3-night minimum, and they've got a no refund policy, just for that very reason. Because you don't want a bunch of empty campsites, and who knows, it may in the last 2 hours before the eclipse clear off. It's done that before. I've been on many of them. People have all left and said, oh, it's not going to be clear here. I don't want to stay in Podunk, Mississippi. I'm going to go someplace else. Well, they leave, and here it is. I've got the whole eclipse to myself. Hooray for that. Now, this is an actual eclipse taken from the International Space Station. This is pretty cool because this is the sun and moon together, and this is the shadow being cast on the cloud tops of the earth. That's pretty cool in itself. This is about where you will be here in Jonesboro during that eclipse, in that little tiny tight circle right there. And that eclipse shadow is moving this direction, and it's going to pass right over your town and skirt off in 2.5 minutes. Now, let me tell you something about 2.5 minutes. Normally, you look at this and you think, well, Russellville's got 4 minutes and 16 seconds. Hot Springs has got 4 minutes and 7 seconds. Where I am, I've got 4 minutes and 20 seconds, so, right over my observatory. Did I mention that? And so there is some degree of you want to do that, but you got to remember the one in 2017 that caused Nashville to crash on an emergency level was only 2 minutes and 20 seconds long. That's a big eclipse. But 4 minutes, wow, that's a huge eclipse. What Jonesboro is having in next year on April 8th is as long as the longest totality in 2017. So it's a good eclipse. There's nothing to be ashamed about. You're going to have people coming to Jonesboro, and I'll show you why. Here's sort of a time lapse of what you can expect to see. This is actually pretty cool. This is taken about every 18 minutes. Some of you can actually see the moon in this picture. You barely see it. This is that moon moving eastward. Remember I said it moves its own diameter eastward every hour. It's moving eastward across the sun. The sun's down here in the early morning sky, or mid-morning sky. Go back. And you can see it's gradually that dragon devouring the sun until you get to these points right here, right before and right after. You see that little tiny sliver of sun shining out behind the moon, just trying to peek out. That's just moments before totality. I mean, moments, maybe 2 seconds. The funny thing about these points are, you can read a newspaper or a book outside. It's still daylight. You still got shadows. It's just, I mean, it's funny looking. You lose your sense of color and your sense of balance at that point. But it's very, very eerie, but it's still daylight. But when that happens, no, it is dark. It turns to nighttime. This is kind of this is actually a series of photographs from an eclipse many years ago, 14 minutes before, and taken every 4 minutes until totality. And look at how much darker. Of course, it also got cloudier, so we were wiped out. But at the same time, that's pretty impressive. That shows you how dark it's going to be. So I tell people that say, well, what happens if it rains, or you get somebody here in Jonesboro and everybody's set up with, you know, on their sites, their little places, parking wherever they are going to be, and they say, oh, I'm afraid it's going to be cloudy. What are we going to do? And just enjoy it. It's going to turn dark anyway. You're still going to see darkness. It's going to be nighttime. It's just going to be like a cloudy nighttime. That's all. Now, here's what will actually happen to you, or what you will experience. It's going to be nighttime. You're going to see stars. You're going to see some bright planets. The air is going to cool down just like it does at night. 15 degrees probably. The winds are going to start blowing like they do in the evening. Your animals, nocturnal animals, raccoons, mosquitoes, things like that, they're going to start coming out just like they do at night. Only 6 hours of daylight or 7 hours of daylight, and they're shaken. They don't know what's going on. They're totally confused, but they still do their normal thing. They come out, armadillos, all that, the pesky ones. So the animal world is going to be active at this time. As a matter of fact, daylight animals, they go back in. Watch a mimosa tree, for example. If you've got one that's got leaves on it, you know how a mimosa will close up in the evening, those little leaves? They actually close up. Your flowers that do that will also close up during the eclipse. Nature's an incredible thing to watch during a total eclipse. You will lose your depth perception momentarily. I tell people you're going to have your sea legs. It's going to be difficult to walk for a few seconds until you kind of restabilize, because our minds are set up for the brightness of the sun and the exact spectrum, the color and the brightness of the sun. Now, I mentioned animals. Animals are very important. Someone here said that they had cattle, and that during the 2017 eclipse, even though it wasn't a total, they were fascinated by the cows and what the cows did. Oh, it's just the most wonderful thing in the world. If you've got pets, I don't care if it's a parakeet to a St. Bernard or kitty cats, iguanas, it doesn't matter. Watch them. Put a camera on them. Go out and watch the eclipse, and put a camera on your pets. I would leave them indoors, because some pets run away during an eclipse. It's kind of like fireworks, except they're totally confused is the reason. One time in 1980, we went down to the swamps of Mississippi, right on the Gulf Coast, to set up to. Eclipses by that time to me were old hat. I'd seen so many of them. And I wanted to study the wild animals. Okay, you go down to the swamps of Mississippi and you think frogs, crocodiles, herons, gosh, I don't know, not crocodiles, but alligators. But, you know, just things like that, water animals, swampy animals. So we set up recorders. We had Super 8 movie cameras, which were the state of the art at that time. And we were ready for action. And it got darker and darker, and all of a sudden, bingo, it was nighttime. And behind us, all heck broke loose. We were looking out in this direction toward the water, and this was all grassy, reeded area. And we had no idea what was coming at us. Something was coming out of that marsh. And it sounded like they were a battalion of thousands, and they were making more racket than you can imagine. And we were, frankly, terrified. Turned around, and what in the world do you think we saw? wild peacocks. Did anybody in this room know that wild peacocks live in the swamps of Mississippi? I never dreamed that's where they came from, you know, but apparently that's where they breed. And they were fluttering and flying and squawking. You've heard peacocks at the zoos and animal shows, petting zoos. They make the most god-awful noises. But imagine 200 or 300 of them flying out of the reeds the instant of a solar eclipse. Okay, let's say you're going to watch the eclipse, and you've heard all the stories about what you have to have for an eclipse. What do you really need for an eclipse? Now, I put this in here because I think this is something that you really do need to know and something you need to remember. As the eclipse gets closer, you're going to be bombarded with stuff over social media, on TV advertisements, through the mail, people trying to sell you doodads. And I've got some doodads for sale up here too, but these are legit. So just ignore these, okay? Just don't buy that other stuff, buy my stuff. Anyway, there are, I mean, it's just like so many things, anytime opportunists come out of the woodwork to sell things that are really not legitimate. And so we've got what we call the doodad zone. Things, you've got to be careful what you buy. You don't want to invest in something like this, and maybe this won't show up, but it might, it's a possibility. But really all you need for an eclipse period is a good set of eyes. That's really all you need. I tell people, all these people that are going to be coming into the path of totality, these are not astronomers. They're not scientists. These are people who have families. They're business people, doctors, lawyers, people that work in rock quarries, any walk of life. This is probably going to be their family vacation in 2024. They're going to be leaving out on Thursday to get to wherever they're going to be going. The eclipse is on Monday, and they're going to be staying that entire duration wherever they want to be. That's why you need to be ready and assume that you're going to have to be accommodating for 4 days, not just one, because it's not going to work out that way, and you'll see why in a minute. You're dealing with people that are just going to come by them with a blanket on the ground, a picnic basket, and hopefully all their meds so that you don't have to worry about that too. But the bare essentials, they are going to forget. A good pair of eyes is all we need. So let's talk about it, the thing that everybody has heard about, and that is don't look at the sun during an eclipse. David Moore gets on ABC News and, whatever you do, don't look at the sun during an eclipse. Well, that should be worded, don't ever look at the sun. That's bad. Because you're not getting any more radiation out of the sun during an eclipse than you would be if you were laying out on the beach in Pensacola, Florida for 4 hours with your eyes closed and sunglasses on. You're getting more radiation doing that than you are looking at an eclipse for two minutes. Now, another thing to consider, what causes an eclipse? The eclipse is caused by the moon blocking out the sun. So if it's blocking out the sun's disk, it's blocking out its radiation too. It essentially is saving your eyesight. There is no magic radiation coming out of the sun whatsoever. It's the same UV radiation, infrared, ultraviolet, cosmic radiation, and X radiation. The rule is just don't ever go around looking at the sun. You'd be an idiot to do that. Who does that? We all go outside and we mow our grass or we work in our gardens and we look up from time to time to see if clouds are coming in or there may be a bird flying over and you get the sun in your eyes. Have you ruined your eyes? No, you have not. Have you gotten radiation in them? Yes. But God gave us the ability to absorb a certain amount of that radiation without harming the retinas of our eyes. So, yes, you need eclipse glasses, but you don't need them exclusively. Now, what do I mean by that? During the partial phases, you have nothing blocking the sun's radiation. So you don't want to be the guy on the beach with his eyes wide open, bathing in the sun. You want to have the eclipse glasses on then, okay? They block out properly fitted eclipse glasses which have an ISO certification and they're approved by NASA supposedly. They block out all those harmful radiations from your eyes. But if you have your glasses on, let's say that all of a sudden you realize, totality's coming up. I can see that little edge of the sun, and all of a sudden something's wrong with my glasses. I can't see anything. The sun, where did the sun go? It's behind the moon. Take your glasses off. You got to take the glasses off or you're not going to see totality because there's no light. All you're seeing during totality is the sun's glow, the atmosphere of the sun. You're not getting that sun, that radiation that's coming out of the sun. So you remove the glasses during totality for 2.5 minutes here, and you put them back on when the partial phases come back out, because remember, you've got partial phases leading up to totality that last about an hour and a half, totality for 2.5 minutes, and then you got partial phases coming out. School kids particularly have got to practice this, and I really think that I'm urging all communities to let their schools out, both for the educational and scientific value of watching an eclipse and learning about it, setting up activities that they can do either at home or as a group, plus the safety factor. You don't want your school children trying to catch a bus when you've got 10,000 to 100,000 people extra in this town. And it's that simple. Most communities are canceling schools on that Monday, which I think is an excellent idea. And for those of you who are interested, these are the Eclipse glasses. These are NASA. And these are really nothing more than, it's fairly good cardboard, I guess. But the lenses are Mylar. Most of you know what Mylar is. It's the stuff they put on weather balloons. But unlike weather balloons, this is the stuff they actually put on the spaceships like Skylab and the International Space Station, so that their cameras can peer through it safely without burning all the circuitry in the cameras. So it does filter out. As a matter of fact, you can look at anything in this room, that bright light, the screen. I can't see that screen. It takes the sun to get through these, and it appears that natural yellow color. So these are ISO certified, and I do have a bunch. The reason I brought these to sell is that it's because I got a bunch. Not really, I'm running out. I ordered 7,000 pair, and I'm down to just a few hundred now. People are not getting their glasses. They're back ordered. The ones that are coming in are knockoffs. And you've got to be careful. Somebody asked me earlier tonight, how do you know? There's the ISO number, and these have that on here. That -2 is the key. That's the NASA approved. The problem with just ordering glasses from anybody is that anybody can order these things made up out of balloon Mylar, and you can buy balloon Mylar on Amazon, and you can make these glasses up and unprinted on the inside. All of the good glasses are printed on the inside on this earpiece. And believe it or not, like I say, it's doodad zone. I have seen people order these things blank on this side, take them to a local printer, and have the ISO number printed on it after they get their glasses. And they're 100% knockoffs. Now, they reduce the glare, but they're not blocking any of those radiations. So you've got to be careful. If you want to order your own, I suggest you get them from Amazon. And if you order them from Amazon, if they've got them, they're showing sometimes in stock and they're not. They sell them so fast. But if you order them from Amazon, look down there. You know how, I'm an Amazon nut. I love Amazon. But when you order something, it has it over there on the right-hand side. It says sold by, and there'll be some company. In this case, it was the Carnegie Foundation on the NASA glasses. And then it says ships from, well, if it says ships from Amazon, you're okay. Because they're not going to sell something that they want to be liable for somebody going blind with. So you could pretty well assume that those would be good. Or you can just pick up some here. That's sales pitch number one. Now, another added attribute of the Eclipse glasses, no matter who you get them from, is that you can take those same glasses. Everybody says, how can I photograph the eclipse, or can I photograph the eclipse? You can make magnificent photographs of the eclipse and see the prominences, those flames coming out. You can actually take movies and you can see the sun's prominences, the flames moving, and actually the atmosphere moving as the sun's erupting. It's a fascinating thing to do. All you've got to do is take one of your little Mylar lens pieces like she's doing and hold it over the camera lens. If you're going to take a movie, you need your camera stationary, so just use some tape. That's all you got to do. And then when it comes time for totality, just like with your eyes, you take the glasses off your camera and let it film totality just with the camera. Because the light is so dim, it's less light than if you were aiming your camera at a quarter moon at night. So that's how little light you're actually getting. Now we talk about location, and location is important. And so what is the big deal and how does it work for a community? Now, First of all, you have to understand that this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience for almost everybody. The casual person, the casual resident, will only see one eclipse normally in their life unless they just happen to be in a path where two cross. You're going to have over 2 minutes of totality here. There's going to be 4 minutes in other places, and you ask yourself, well, why would people come to Jonesboro? Well, same question in Murfreesboro. They've got 3 minutes and 10 seconds instead of 4. Or Jasper, Arkansas. Jasper's got 2 minutes and 16 seconds, and yet they're getting fully prepared because they're going to have a deluge of people. Well, why would that be? Jasper, Arkansas has got 446 people in its town. That's their population, and yet they're expecting maybe 100,000 people. How come? How does location work? Well, let's stop and think about this for a minute because this is really important for your town. Okay, there are places in Arkansas, like right there on Petty Jean Mountain where my observatory is, you know, right in the middle of the eclipse, that, you know, are very favored. I don't have to go anywhere. I'm going to lock my gate and I'm going to stay there and not go anywhere. But over here, you're saying, well, why would anybody come in here for 2.5 minutes of totality? Again, 2017 was 2 minutes and 17 seconds of totality. That was the, you know, this is going to be a good eclipse no matter where you are on the eclipse path. But let's look at it a different way. What do we got over here to the east? Yeah, and up here you got another town called Paducah. And over here you got Forest City, you got Wynn. You know, you've got all these towns that are outside that red line. Okay. Which would you rather see? Would you rather see this in Memphis? Or would you rather see this in Jonesboro only an hour away? Well, heck. If it's, you know, if you know you're not going anywhere that day because the roads are going to be just packed with people. So you're going to want to see it. People are going to head to any place they can, and they're looking. Trust me. Let's say you did live in Memphis and you only had 1 day or maybe 2 days. You could leave on Sunday and come back Monday night or Tuesday. And you had to look at the closest place that you could be. That would be Jonesboro. You got a direct line from Memphis to Jonesboro. Same thing with Paducah. Same thing with all these towns down in here. They're not going to go to Little Rock. It's going to be too congested. They're going to look for the best route, the quickest way, and the least obstruction that they've got getting to their destination. And that could be this town right here. Because you look at that map, and it's kind of a wake-up call. And I'll show you another one from the Federal Transportation Department here in just a minute that's even a bigger wake-up call. So you really are a target. You're a target location. Now, this is the list of all the biggies are in yellow, and those are the ones that have the longest eclipse. The longest in our state is DeQueen, and it's not even on there, is it? DeQueen is I just got back from DeQueen, and they're just not real sure what to do. They're right on the border of Arkansas. They got the entire state of Oklahoma coming their way on Eclipse Day, and they're just confused. They have not done much of anything, and they're not real sure what to do at this point. So hopefully something's happened, but you can see where you are. You got 2 minutes and 24, almost 2.5 minutes. That's a good eclipse. That's as good as it got in 2017. They had 3 million people on the eclipse path in 2017, just to give you an idea. Now, let me talk about some of the biggies. You've got Hot Springs, 3 minutes and 36 seconds. That's not much more than you've got here. Hot Springs, every hotel, Airbnb and all that, they're all full in Hot Springs right now for the eclipse. Touring companies, travel agencies bought up all the lodging, and they're already filled. As a matter of fact, the Airbnbs are canceling on people like I mentioned earlier, and they're rebooking at double what they had originally sold that room or house for, which is wrong. And VRBO is the one that's doing it. And the landowners, the property owners, have no control over it. It's not their fault, but that's what's happening. But the idea is that can you get to Hot Springs? Two types of people come to eclipses. You've got the people who are going to make the vacation out of it, and then you've got the one you've heard me call day trippers. Day trippers are the people that live in Memphis, the people that live in Little Rock and want to get deeper into the eclipse and drive to Russellville. Those are the people that wake up in the morning, on Monday morning, no, let's say Sunday night. They're all sitting around watching TV, and Dad says, hey, you know what would be a good idea? We're going to get the SUV loaded up, put a blanket in there, load up a picnic and a radio and insect spray, and we're going to go up to Russellville, or in Memphis, we're going to go to Jonesboro. And we're going to leave at 3 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning because we're going to beat the crowd. No, you're not. No, you're not going to beat anybody. You're going to be in line with every one of them that's doing the same thing that you are. Those are the day trippers. The smart ones will be leaving. If they think they can get to their destination, they're the ones that are going to be leaving on Sunday. Most of the people who are coming as a destination will be leaving on Thursday, getting to their destination on Thursday because everything is sold out. There may or may not be rooms for them. People that don't have rooms already probably are not going to be able to get them. We have a lot of little camping villages going up, primitive camping, RV sites. I tell people, if you've got a parking lot, open it up for camping, self-contained camping if you can. You'll make a fortune. RV camping right now is going around $600 to $700 a night for one RV for one night. Tent camping, primitive camping, $350 for a piece of woods to put your tent up in. I've recreated this. This is kind of over your city at 155, right at the beginning of the eclipse. And that's, you see up there, you've got the eclipse sun. This is looking sort of south. It's going to be almost overhead, but a little bit south. And that's Jupiter. That's the planet. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Venus. This does not show the stars. You're going to have a lot of stars out. All the stars, the bright ones, will be visible during the eclipse. But I wanted to show you this for another reason, because this is an added value of this eclipse, as if, the granddaddy of all eclipses is not good enough. I wanted to see what was going to be in the sky when the eclipse happened, when it got dark. First of all, I wanted to see what bright planets could everybody see. Were there going to be any comets out close to the sun that might be visible? Well, lo and behold, I was floored when I saw this. The results of running this planetarium program to April 8, 2024 at exactly the time of the eclipse, and you can see the sun and the moon right here in the middle. Every single planet in the solar system, every single planet, you got Mercury and Venus, Earth, we're standing on the Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, comets, all the asteroids, meteorites. Everything that God put in our solar system is going to be right over your head or under your feet at one time. It's never, ever going to happen in your lifetime again. I think that is the coolest thing. And that, to me, makes getting out and looking at this eclipse worth it. Okay, let's talk about weather. If it's cloudy, it doesn't matter. Well, it does, really, because you can, like I say, it's going to get dark, and that'll be fun. The chances of us being clear, or at least just partly cloudy, are going up. And that's a real good sign. Now, you're in a little bit more icky area, but it's rising all the time. The bluer you get, the better your chances of seeing the sky, okay? You notice that we're kind of right in the middle, as usual in Arkansas. We're right in the middle. We're getting better down this way pretty fast. But this is all kind of moving this way. The trend is moving out of Texas and Mexico and more up our way. And this is based on the latest climatological studies. So I think it's pretty good. I think we've got a really good chance. It's between 50 and 60% chance right now of clear sky, or at least just partly cloudy sky. And here's why you want to be prepared. Here's the bad news. You're going to have people like crazy. Like I said, it may not be people from Australia or China or New England, people that travel from all over the world, literally. You're going to hear more languages. They may not come here. They may go someplace else. But you got to look at this two ways. You've got all the day trippers coming in, and then you've got people who are trying to get to Russellville or trying to get to Hot Springs or trying to get to Petit Jean Mountain or whatever, and they can't get there because everything's booked up. So they start looking at the next best alternative. And you're going to have people from all walks of life and from all countries here. But you're going to have a whole lot of neighbors. If you just take 10% of Memphis, Helena, Paducah, Forest City, and all those cities down to your south and south, to the east and southeast, just 10% of it, 1%, you're going to be inundated with people. Here's a travel map. I told you about the Federal Transportation Commission. This is cool. This looks like somebody's lung with veins in it, but it's not. This is the USA. look, this is down, and this has changed because the weather, this is a hot spot because it's supposed to be perfectly clear. But I want you to notice the red circle. That's in Arkansas. And I'm seeing two big old blobs in Arkansas. Those blobs represent the amount of people they expect in those, concentrated in those two areas. That one right there is Russellville, the big one. It's number 8 in the country. Okay, what do you think's going to happen if people head this way and on Saturday morning they realize Russellville is full, the highways are backed up? Do you think they're going to go home? No. They're going to come up 167, and they're going to start looking for a place. So be prepared for that. You see that other big blob right there? That's between you and Mountain View. That's amazing. Who would have thought? And it's because of the arteries of highways that lead into the areas. You've got a lot of highways, not necessarily big, huge highways, but roadways were one of the main considerations. This was based on the number of people that went to the Eclipse in 2017 that said they were definitely not going to miss the 2024. They went home and told their neighbors, friends, co-workers, this thing is great, you've got to see the next eclipse. So they're all coming too, and they're telling their friends to come. They're expecting right now up to 30 million people in the eclipse path. That's the latest figure. That's all from Maine all the way down into Texas. 30 million people, that's the top number. And that is being a little bit high end. But let me tell you what Hot Springs did. Their visitor bureau paid a consulting company, a demographics company, to come in and do a study of course, the Arkansas Derby is that weekend too, unfortunately. Yeah, so you've got that going on, kind of like what's going on tonight here on campus with me. But you've got the Arkansas Derby. You've got all the springtime, for one thing. Everything's blooming. You got Garvin Gardens in full bloom. And you've got all these normal visitors, plus you've got the eclipse on top of it. And other things going on. There's some more festivals, believe it or not. So they had originally estimated, same company, gave them an estimate of 300,000 people coming into Hot Springs. That's a lot of people. That's more than Hot Springs can handle. So they were kind of gearing up for that worst case scenario. Well, after hearing more and more from other municipalities, they had the company come back and reassess. Now they think 1.5 million people in Hot Springs alone. One town. Hot Springs can't handle that many people. You know how tight the traffic is in that town. It's going to be rough. Here's what happened in 2017. Carbondale, Illinois. When this picture was taken, 30 minutes before this picture was taken, every car that you see lined up on the sides was out there in the middle of that interstate. They had to bring in the National Guard and every police force they could to get them off the highway so that traffic could start flowing. Well, they succeeded, but look what? Traffic ain't flowing. And it's because over the hill, it's backed up again. So it's just a no-win situation. In Casper, none of these people got to see the eclipse. They were 20 miles outside of Casper. They missed it. This is taking advantage of the opportunity right here. This is some guy that set up an RV park. Same thing, all over the place. But here's kind of the good side of it. You know, the festival idea, the idea of making money, let your arts and crafts, your schools, all work together to come up with ideas and ways, creative things to do to make money off these. But the granddaddy of all of them is Nashville, Tennessee. They were expecting 300,000 people. They ended up with 3 million. That's what they think. They had to shut the city down on that Monday. The hospitals were closed except for emergencies. They had the staff stay over on emergency staff only. They had to stay at the hospital. Nashville ran out of water. They couldn't get to all the fires and the emergencies in town. The courts were called off. The city came to just a complete standstill. And they were prepared. They had a whole staff of people getting ready for the eclipse for the city. But that's what can happen if you're not prepared. So as far as Jonesboro is concerned, what you need to do, and as residents, you need to make sure that your city services are ready. You can help them. Volunteers. You need volunteers. The city really needs volunteers. A lot of towns that I'm working with now, I'm going back to towns now, and I'm talking to school groups, high schools, and I'm recruiting them to go out and help the cities to be volunteers and the stewards of their cities to help them succeed, because it's going to make them look good too, and they're going to get special credit, you know, on their graduation certificate for being part of the community services. But everything from, I put in UPS and postal services. We don't think about stuff like that. Deliveries of essential medications and foods, delivery of bottled water. How's that going to come into the community if all the roads are blocked? But all of your obvious things, wrecker services, cars that are stalled along the road, somebody's got to come get them out. It's obvious about police and fire and regular infrastructure, gasoline. Your tanks, there's not enough tanks in this town to hold enough gas to get everybody out. And that was another problem in Nashville. Every car waiting in those lines that you saw ran out of gas. The National Guard came in with tanker trucks. They gave them 1 gallon of gas for their car. Once traffic started moving, some of them got out, some of them didn't. But 1 gallon of gas is not going to get you very far. So the town has to be ready in all those ways. And not to be negative, but here are the problems that you run into. You've got space. Again, every parking lot should be available for people to set up and day trip if they want to. You'll be amazed at how many people will come up with their families in their SUV and stay in their car for 2 or 3 nights. You'll be amazed, really. And they'll be looking for places to use the bathroom, of course. You've got food, water, sanitation. If you haven't got porta potties on standby, you better get them now. The porta potty industry has gone sky high. I wish I had invested in it. They can't get them. Marlton has 300 already contracted. They're wanting 300 more, and they can't get them. So just small things like that. The medicine and medical supplies doesn't really mean for your hospitals. It means for your individuals. You'll be amazed at how many people go to these Eclipse events, because it is a 4-day event, and they take what they think is their medicines, or they leave them at home and forget them, which is one of the most common things you forget when you go on vacation. But you get out there and you got somebody that's dependent on blood pressure or insulin or other medication for heart control, you're in trouble if your pharmacies or there's not some way to have them stocked up for essential medications that people may run out of. Utilities and communication. Again, that's one of the main things that the city itself needs to focus on. And that goes back to Garth Brooks. This is what happens if you don't take those precautions. You don't want to be in this situation. That car right there, it took them 4.5 hours from what I hear to get into town. They didn't get to see Garth. They turned around and went home and found out they couldn't even get their money back. I mean, that even makes it worse. At least we're not charging for the Eclipse, okay? So don't come back to me for a refund. But the benefits are enormous. These are the benefits you can reap. Tax income, revenue for businesses, revenue for your restaurants, your hotels, people with small shops, gasoline, convenience stores. And I urge you to put up a festival. Think in terms of a festival, and don't have it in one place. Spread it out. Get the people spread out over town. Don't put them in one area because you've got this traffic problem. Spread it out. Let schools handle some of it. I suggest getting the schools involved in art, music, literature, all sorts of dynamic things that the students can design and construct on their own and share it with the public. This is just a good way to keep people busy. You know the old adage, idle hands make the devil's workshop? You get 100,000 people in Jonesboro, Arkansas with nothing to do. I don't care if they're the finest, preacher's family coming in here. People are going to get in trouble because they're going to be looking for something to do, and they're going to end up on somebody's property. You're going to have complaints. So make it enjoyable for them and make it efficient. Open spaces is the key. You want places where people can set up and feel free and open to where they can participate. The festival atmosphere, you've got museums, you've got activities, you've got everything you need here. So the main thing is just simply be prepared and be ready. It can be a very, very good experience for you, or it can be a nightmare. Now, from the city standpoint, you have the open spaces and you provide them to the people. The day troopers come in, they park their car on the streets, and they put out their lawn chairs, and they're ready. They got their space all staked out, and they're ready for the eclipse. What happens when it gets dark in town? The lights come on, remember? Yeah, and you would be amazed at how many angry people have set up underneath street lights with all their gear, and there's no way in heck they can get out because they're blocked in every direction, and they're sitting there looking at a street light. They can't even see the sun. So if volunteers, you need to have people say, look, I know you like where you are, but look right over your head. You got a street light, you're not going to see anything. So keep that in mind. I want to tell you this story, and then I'm going to close. I know, thank goodness. Big applause. This is great. This is a real good thing for y'all to remember. This is the last eclipse in 2017. This is pretty impressive just on its own, but I'm going to give you some numbers here. I think I'm really smart, so I thought I'm going to count how many RVs there are in some of these sections. Yeah. So I tried to, enhance it and magnify it, and I counted 2 or 3 of these things, and I got an average of about how many RVs I thought were in each one of those. I call them pods, those squares, rectangles. And then I counted the number of rectangles, and being the mathematician that I am, I multiplied them together. And I came out with a number of total RVs, and it was astonishing, because this guy was charging $1,000 a night for an RV. It was astonishing. But then I got to thinking, so I thought, I want to call this guy. I want to find out how much he made. I got to get in touch with him. But before I did, I started looking at it, and I realized this was expansion area. He had not cut, this is a cattle field. He decided not to put cows on it that year. He decided to make it an eclipse village. That's what they call it. And so instead of putting in cows, he plowed roads, or cut roads with his bush hogs, and he stopped here. This is all expansion area up here. This was not intended, but he had such a demand, he thought, why not? I'm making $1,000 a pop. He may have charged them $950 because it was probably a swamp. But then I got to looking at all this over here on the left. And if you look closely, you'll see what I'm seeing. There's circus tents. There's rodeo arenas. There's food trucks. There's magic shows. Cirque du Soleil was there. He thought of everything. He made zillions of dollars just off that entertainment area over there. All this open area was for outdoor games for the kids. He had it all. So anyway, it took me a year, but I finally got a hold of this guy. I found out who he was. He wouldn't talk to anybody for the longest time. And I told him, I said, look, I know you made a lot of money off of it. You don't have to tell me the exact figure. I said, would you mind telling me kind of, or if I give you a number, would you verify it? And he said, I guess it wouldn't hurt for me to tell you what I told the IRS. I said, okay, tell me what you told the IRS. He said, I reported $3 million. So that means he probably made $9 million. I mean, at the very minimum. And I'm sure he made more than that. And he didn't do anything except cut roads and let people drive in self-contained RVs. So think about where you've got here for people to go, things for them to do, places for them to park, and how you're going to entertain them while they're here. And you will be successful. I wanted to tell you, most people don't realize this, but I've done, this is number 47 of my presentations in Arkansas, and I do this because I like to educate people. I don't charge to do this at all. So I do have some pendants if you'd like to look at them. We do have some pendants to sell. I designed these myself. These are solar eclipse pendants. The one on the bottom has the date stamped individually on the back. That's pewter on brass. The top one is actual Hawaiian lava rock in burnished antique brass. So anyway, they're up here if you'd like to take a look at them. And that would help support the continuing. I've still got over 20 to go, so anything would help. This is what South Carolina did, and this is what we're going to conclude with. Look at that figure, $300 million in tax revenue. They had 2 minutes of eclipse before the sun set over the Atlantic Ocean, and they capitalized on it, boy. So get what you can and try to be successful. And just for fun, this is the way the sun looked just a couple of weeks ago. Any of you that have had trouble with your car radios or your cell phones lately or your internet breaking up a little bit, this is the reason. Look at all that activity. This tells us it's going to be a magnificent eclipse in 2024. And I do thank you for your attention and for coming out tonight. And sorry it went a little bit long, but it's hard to cover the creation of the universe in an hour or less. So, thank you very much.